Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to stop by my little channel and corner of the internet to talk about, or rather to listen to me talk about, Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2. My name is Isaac Hydra, and today we're going to be talking about the objective system within this game. Now, this is going to predominantly be an informative educational video discussing the psychology behind the system, as well as a little bit of reasoning as to why it's here. Now, some may see this as potentially being defending developer design choices, but actually this is just simply my view of the game, and this is my opinion based on my deduction as to what's going on with the system, why it's here, how it could be used, how it should be used, and what it brings. Now, firstly, we need to set the scene. Firstly, there's one thing we have to admit. We have 12 factions. Some of these ships are faster, some are slower, some are invisible, some are not, some have long range, some have short range. You get the idea by now. Some favour hit and run, some favour sustained fights, some have to keep moving, some don't, etc. It's very safe to say that there are different strengths and weaknesses of these ships, and each one of these ships has to tailor its strengths and weaknesses in accordance with its ideal fighting style. So what I mean by this is, if in a game, and this is pretty much any player versus player environment, if you have a mobile character, very, very mobile, one that can pick and choose its fights, typically it's going to have to be a little bit weaker or low ammunition. It's going to have some drawback to stop it just simply being another version of a basic character that's just quicker. Otherwise it would just simply be the obvious choice every time. So what I'm saying is, factions like the stealth factions within this game have to be balanced around the fact that they can pick fights when they want to. Now, what that means is a head-to-head engagement between, let's say, a tanky fleet rather than a tanky faction, because Imperium can still be stealth. But let's say we've got 5 big cruisers here. We've got a bunch of stealth ships. The stealth ships aren't balanced to be able to take down those cruisers at the same time if they're clumped together. Nor should they be. If they were, then there is no reason to pick the cruisers, because the stealth ships can also stealth. Hope that you guys are with me thus far. You have to balance these factions around their ideal playstyle. This means fast fleets will want to pick you off, stealth fleets will want to pick you off, long-range fleets will want to pick you off, and they'll all want to do so differently. Brawler fleets will want to charge you down. And that's pretty much where we're at. I like to think of these fleets as being characters within something like an ARPG or a PvP MMO. Let's say something like World of Warcraft. We have characters that are like the rogue. We have characters... Ooh, I've got a frog in my throat. We have characters that are like the tank. We have numerous different personalities as such, and they each need to be played differently. And the objective system is the incentive for them to fight. Now, the reason I say this is because without the objective system, there's capacity for the tank fleets to stick together, to huddle together, and just to stay that way, which gives the mobile fleet a huge disadvantage. And remember, it should be, because otherwise, if the tanky fleet split up, it would be far too easy for the other fleet, the mobile fleet, to kill them. Hopefully you're with me thus far, we're on the same page here. Anyway, that's just the grounding as to why the objective system is here, and I want to rewind our memory back. We don't have to go back too far, and I think we can all admit here, hands down, Dawn of War 1 was a fantastic game. What did Dawn of War 1 have in its games type, which was actually one of the most successful and, let's say, key features within the blimmin' game? It was the fact that it had points on the map that you had to fight over. That's one of the main reasons that game was so unique and interesting. Okay, there's loads of others. Don't get me wrong, the game had loads of good stuff going for it. But this was a key thing that forced early engagement. You were fighting stuff straight from the word go. And there's a bit of a misconception, I think, with Battlefleet Gothic system, that it's not about fighting, it's about capturing them and running away. And that's not actually true. That's not actually true. That only happens, and I'm sorry to say this, but if you've had this happen to you, it's been one of two reasons. It's either if you've been chasing a fleet around and they have just been running and then you lose, it's one of two things. Either the map was too spread out, the points were too spread out, and your fleet was not suited to it. In which case, I'd say rethink your fleet, or you just simply made some poor decisions. You simply did something wrong. And that's not to make me sound like a douche, but that is probably technically true of some of these situations at least. And I will freely admit now, some of these maps are not designed very well for the tanky classes, for the slower ships, but some of them are actually designed incredibly well for them. And what we'll do in a moment is go through an actual skirmish game as such, or at least the opening portion of it, to discuss through this strategy and why it works. Now, what I want to say is that whoever has 3 of these 5 objectives on the map is gonna have the let's say the control of sorts. They're controlling the game in the sense that they're forcing the other player to do something. You force the hand of the other player. They don't have to do it straight away, but the sooner they do it, the better. And they may have to take a bit of time to maneuver into a better position to do so. But if you have 3 points and you're generating more of these capture points, the enemy has to fight you. That's why this is here. You need to try and get 3 of them. That way you're in control. You don't, and this is a misconception, and when I was preparing for this video I kept using the word attacker and defender, and I've stopped that now because I think it's misleading. Very misleading. If anything, if one were to use the term defender, let's say you've got 3 points, the defender is much more like a sports defender. Your role is not to sit there and wait. Not at all. While you have those 3 points, your role is to try and zone away enemies using your superior muscle. If you're a football fan, or soccer, if we've got any Americans watching, if you're a fan of that, you will know what it's like to be a defender. You've got to get stuck in there. You've got to push around. You've got to make some space. You've got to use your skills in order to try and keep that area secure, which doesn't involve just sitting in the defender in the 6-yard goal line and just waiting for someone to kick a ball at the net. Of course not. Within these games, you can still attack, and there may be situations where, let's say, the rogue overextends and then you as a defender can chase them down and kill them. And there may also be situations where you can relocate entirely and become a midfielder, because it might be the appropriate thing to do. But the thing is now, with this objective system, is we have these choices to make as players, and it's not necessarily easy to make the right one the whole time, but that is the point of a real-time strategy game, or let's say it's a real-time tactics game, because that's kind of the more appropriate term I think to use. But let's stick with RTS because we're all on the same page that way. This is the good thing about this. This is one brain against another brain, 2 people making decisions. Your decisions will result in success or failure. Me personally, and you don't have to like this, but I would prefer that to a game where it's just a case of who can press the buttons more efficiently and who has more technical brilliance in execution of a boarding action. You know? I would rather feel like I'm playing chess with someone else. I would like to feel like my mind is being pitted against theirs. And you might be thinking, Hydra, who are you to say this? You're terrible at the game. Well, 9 hours I spent yesterday being Sunday. I spent a long time just playing the weakest faction within the game, the 24% win rate, and I was able to win 90% of my games. Ish, might have been 80. But for anyone that was watching the stream, we won the majority of games. Why and how? Simply because I played the game. The game as it's meant to be played. I captured points, and if I didn't need to take a fight that I didn't want to, I didn't, because that would have been a silly thing to do, because I wouldn't have won the fight. Some fights I did take that I didn't want to, in the few games where my opponent decided to capture enough points to force my hand, and then we had a brawl on our hands, and we had some brilliant fun while doing it, and I'm sure that some of the few of you that watched had a great time watching it. It was fun and engaging, and it doesn't take a lot of effort. What we're going to do now is load into this battle. We've picked a fairly generic fleet on the side of the Imperium, and we're going to go against something, or we'll go for something a little bit spooky like the Azurani. Oh god, let's go Tyranids, because everyone's scared of Tyranids these days. Right. Now, it has to be said that the psychology of this game does change when you've got a tank versus tank, and I think that's the ideal situation that many players are kind of after. A tank versus tank means that both fleets are just going to face tank each other, charge in there and see basically who's got the bigger baton. We're going to use baton here so I don't get demonetized, but you know what I mean. That's fine, but that only works in tank versus tank, and if you want to play that way, you can kind of do it in some situations, but when you have tank versus rogue, you have to adapt. When you have a tank versus, let's say, a ranger, which I'd say the Tau is more like, or some of the Tau ships at least sort of long-range kiting, not so much on the kiting, more just on the very long-range annoying damage, you have to play differently. You have to do things differently, and that process of adaptation is what prevents this from being incredibly boring. Right, anyway, we've got a fleet here, we've got a bunch of points on the map. Our job as the commander of this fleet is to identify, and this is a pretty simple process to start off with, it's to identify the smallest triangle that I can make between these capture points, okay? And this is a pretty good map, actually. This is a pretty good map. Some of them are better than others for this. So the smallest triangle, I think, is probably ideally this. So we have a few options here. Now, this is close to his spawn, obviously. So is this. But it's not a problem if I don't have the majority of the points for the first third of the game. I could spend 5 minutes with 2 and then capture the third, and that's still fine because eventually I will win. So what I could do, and there's multiple different approaches to this, and there's not necessarily a correct answer, although some may be more efficient than others. I probably want the main bulk of my fleet to head up through here and to here. So we probably want to, we'll go in slow-mo in a moment and talk through. And we'll go there, we'll go there, we'll go there. Okay. Now, I haven't thought through this as much as I should have, and we'll put it on slow-mo just to give you some sort of inkling as to what I would be planning in this situation, how to play around this. I would send enough ships to capture this quickly, and a quantity of ships that I'm confident that would be able to challenge this middle zone if the enemy sent his entire fleet. I want him to know that I'm sending everything here. Not only is this position in a gas cloud, which is amazing, but it's in a gas cloud and next to a gas cloud, which is also amazing. But anyway, it also has control over this point. So I could actually have a ship in here, quite happily camping 2 of these. Yes, there's one there that's probably a little bit far away to also look after. I could then capture this instead. Now, what I would probably try and do in this game is to prioritize this, then this. This one's going to be somewhat maybe contested. And I may need to use a few thrusters to get here and then see what's happening. If he's only captured this one, and I'm pretty sure his fleet is over this side, I would probably then move to contest this, or hold here. I could still do that, because it's going to take him a long time to get down here, where we're going to have one ship headed. And my personal preference here, because he might manage to get another escort or another ship down, would be actually to send another ship to capture it, and this ship further up to scout to see what's coming. And the moment I know it's safe, send them over there to join in and start scouting over here. That's just my preference for this one, but that may not be the correct thing to do, but it's better than ignoring the objectives. But anyway, back to the game itself. Now, once we've captured these, let's say we get this one, and this one, okay? Now let's, for a second, imagine that up here, his entire fleet was coming down this flank and is just going to murder my little ship. Hopefully I manage to scout him and get away. It would suck if I don't. It would definitely be a very big clue if you don't see this ticking up very quickly that he's probably doing something sneaky. So if he was to go down here, my role is not necessarily that I have to defend this now. My role could be, okay, we'll lay down some fire here and we'll send one ship to go capture this instead, and then that one ship can go and capture this, assuming that I'm confident there's not enough ships to, put up a sufficient fight here to defend. But what I'm trying to point out is you don't have to sit there doing nothing. You can relocate. But as well as that, if he overextends, if he does decide to contest me here, great, I just fight him. If he decides to maybe flank around and go for this, that's fine, because I've got this one, and then I can push for this one. That's fine. So if he's then got his whole fleet here, I could have my fleet around about here instead, and then I could go and capture this one as well. And actually this, and this are pretty easy to hold on to. I'd probably want to keep some ships in here though. It's in a gas cloud, for the love of God. It's amazing to get shots from. But hopefully you guys are seeing that the decisions you make within this game as to where you go and what you capture and why and when do influence whether you win or lose, but the main thing that will prevent you from having fun within this is if you willingly ignore it, because if you do, you will lose, especially against fleets that have no incentive to fight you, especially if you're playing small fleets and especially if you're playing slow fleets. You will just be outplayed if you insist on clumping up together. And if you insist on chasing across the map, I've been chased to the bottom corners of the earth several times before teleporting all the way to the other using a warp jump. That player deserves to lose. Or rather, I hope they learn the lesson from that it's not worth chasing. All you have to do is go back and capture the point and wait for them, or do some scouting and manoeuvring to do so. Now, one last thing I'd like to touch on before we go is do not leave your little scouts. Let's say we're holding these 3 for now. Don't leave your scout over there being like, yep, he's just scouting, that's fine. What's going to happen is he's going to stay there and he's going to die. Okay? This guy is incredibly important. If the enemy has stuff in gas clouds, if you've not identified them, all sorts of situations, you need these guys. Maybe they're just invisible and you need to spot them. The reason that these have a scan ability is because it should be used, and then that stealth detection range is tiny, no bigger than any other ship. So go there. We fast forward, go up here if I want to see if there's anything coming. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up. We'll just boost a little bit to make it quicker. Right, now I scan. Now I go down. Now, I've just done a scan that is this entire range. I know there's no ships within here, so now I can leave. I do not need to be here. I've probably got enough time for them to come back. For them to run all the way through here. Okay, if I was really unlucky, if he was right on the edge and was moving down, yeah, maybe he would get in range. But now I've cleared that bit of the map, I need to move the escort somewhere safe. When the ability is ready again, then we send them out again. Do not leave them hovering on the edge, because it will just get them killed. Again, somewhere like here, I'd send it out, see, okay, what's going on? Boop, do a bit of fishing, and then we get them straight out of there. Now, see, a little bit of bad luck here. We probably sent him too far. With the, let's say, the amount of fast forwarding I've done, I've miscalculated where the enemy would be. You kind of want to be before where you know that they could be with their speed and clear that area. I obviously misjudged that. But anyway, this is me, Esic Newbie Hydra, signing out for today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you find it useful in terms of thinking about this system. And I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. I know there's probably going to be a few challenges to the use of the system, but again, guys, I would implore you, the one thing that will happen if you take away this system is that the fleets that kite will keep kiting. The fleets that are stealth will still be stealthed, but they won't have any incentive to fight you. They won't necessarily win on points, and they won't take advantage of stubbornness. We've got to call it for what it is. It might be less frustrating to call them OP rather than to blame the game design, but the same situation is still going to occur. They're still going to have the same playstyle because that's how they should be played, because that's just what it is. Guys, you look after yourselves. I'll see you around. Take care.